gals, good morning. It's Monday morning, April 6th. I hope you all had a good weekend. It was a beautiful day yesterday, wasn't it? Well, I'm back with Baby Susan. Baby Susan got plenty of sleep this weekend, and I'm going to read you another chapter of Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Remember when we left off, the Ingalls family had just crossed the creek, and it was very sad because they lost Jack when they crossed the creek. The family, remember, traveled from Wisconsin, across Minnesota into Iowa, down through Iowa, through Missouri, and now they're in Kansas, and they're going to what's called Indian Territory, a place where there are no settlers, there are only Native Americans living there. And remember, Pa wanted to leave the big woods of Wisconsin because he thought it was getting too crowded with people, and there wasn't enough game or enough animals to hunt. So, we're going to go to Chapter 3. If you have a book, it starts on page number 18, and it's called Camp on the High Prairie. Now, remember back in these days, in the 1860s, when people traveled, they couldn't stop in at a hotel because there are very few hotels and not many towns. And remember, there are no roads where the Ingalls are. This chapter, Camp on the High Prairie, the prairie, remember, is a place that's mainly all tall grass. There are very few trees. It's very flat land, and all they can see for miles and miles around is the grass. So we're going to get started here, and make sure Baby Susan gets in the picture here so you can all say hi to her. Here we go, everybody. Chapter 3, Camp on the High Prairie. I'm sorry, it wasn't page 18, it's page 28. My 96-year-old eyes don't work too well sometimes. Pa made camp as usual. First, he unhitched and unharnessed Pet and Patty, and he put them on their picket lines. Picket lines were long ropes fastened to iron pegs driven into the ground. The pegs were called picket pins. When horses were on picket lines, they could eat all the grass that the long ropes would let them reach. But when Pet and Patty were put on them, the first thing they did was to lie down and roll back and forth and over. They rolled till the feeling of the harness was gone from their backs. Now, if you think of a picket line, boys and girls, think of a dog leash, or not a leash, but a leash, a dog chain, or a cable that you put your dog on in your yard so it can't run away from your yard. That's basically what a picket line is. While Pet and Patty were rolling, Pa pulled all the grass from a large round space of ground. There was old dead grass at the roots of the green grass, and Pa would take no chance of setting the prairie on fire. If fire once started in that dry undergrass, it would sweep the whole country bare and black. Pa said, "Best be on the safe side. It saves trouble in the end." When the space was clear of grass, Pa laid a handful of dry grass in its center. From the creek bottoms he brought an armful of twigs and dead wood. He laid small twigs and larger twigs, and then the wood on the handful of dry grass, and he lighted the grass. The fire crackled merrily inside the ring of bare ground, and it couldn't get out. Now here's a picture of the horses. You can kind of see them over here. Pet and Patty, here's one of them rolling around. And here's Pa. Here's the wagon. As you can see, it's very flat, and all you can see is grass and the horizon. Then Pa brought water from the creek, while Mary and Laura helped Ma get supper. Ma measured coffee beans into the coffee mill, and Mary ground them. Laura filled the coffee pot with the water Pa brought, and Ma set the pot in the coals. She set the iron bake oven in the coals, too. Now, here's a picture of Mary grinding the coffee. See, at home, if your moms and dads grind coffee at home, they have probably an electric one, and they just press a button that grinds it. And back in these days, Mary's turning this crank here, and that grinds the coffee into this little box. And if you look very carefully, there's a little drawer there. You pull out that drawer, and there's the ground coffee. And here's Laura back here. She's taking water and scooping it into the coffee pot so they can make coffee. Very different than making coffee today, isn't it? While it heated, she mixed cornmeal and salt with water and patted it into little cakes. She greased the bake oven with a pork rind, so that's basically fat from the pork from the bacon. Laid the cornmeal cakes in it and put on its iron cover. Then Pa raked more coals over the cover while Ma sliced fat salt pork. She fried the slices in the iron spider. The spider had short legs to stand on in the coals, and that is why it was called a spider. If it had had no legs, it would have been only a frying pan. So basically, boys and girls, the cook stove that Ma is talking about, or the bake oven that Ma is talking about, what we call that today is we call it a Dutch oven. And some of you that go camping, you probably used a Dutch oven before. It's a iron pot with a lid on it, and you put it right in the fire, and then you put coals over it so it acts like so it can get heat from all sides. And an iron spider, a frying pan is what you use at home to make eggs or make pancakes in, or make bacon in. And an iron spider is basically just a frying pan, like Laura said, but it has little legs on it to set in the fire. The coffee boiled, the cakes baked, the meat fried, and they all smelled so good that Laura grew hungrier and hungrier. Pa set the wagon seat near the fire. He and Ma sat on it. Mary and Laura sat on the wagon tongue. Each of them had a tin plate and a steel knife and a steel fork with bone handles. Now, boys and girls, the wagon tongue is the part of the wagon that comes off the front and attaches to the horses. So Laura and Mary sat on that. Would not be real comfortable, I wouldn't think. Ma had a tin cup, and Pa had a tin cup, and baby Carrie had a little one all her own. But Mary and Laura had to share their tin cup. They drank water. They could not drink coffee until they grew up. Remember back in Little House in the Big Woods, boys and girls? Laura and Mary gave Carrie each half of their cookie, so Carrie ended up getting the most cookie. It's kind of like that with a tin cup. Laura and Mary have to share their tin cup, but baby Carrie gets her own. While they were eating supper, the purple shadows closed around the campfire. The vast prairie was dark and still. Only the wind moved stealthily through the grass, and the large low stars hung glittering from the great sky. The campfire was cozy in the big, chill darkness. The slices of pork were crisp and fat. The corn cakes were good. In the dark beyond the wagon, Pet and Patty were eating too. They bit off bits of grass with sharply crunching sounds. "We'll camp here a day or two," said Pa. "Maybe we'll stay here. There's good land, timber in the bottoms, plenty of game, everything a man could want. What do you say, Caroline?" "We might go farther and fare worse," Ma replied. That means they could go farther and things wouldn't be as nice. "Anyway, I'll look around tomorrow," Pa said. "I'll take my gun and get some good fresh meat." He lighted his pipe with a hot coal and stretched out his legs comfortably. The warm brown smell of tobacco smoke mixed with the warmth of the fire. Mary yawned and slid off the wagon tongue to sit on the grass. Laura yawned too. Ma quickly washed the tin plates, the tin cups, the knives and forks. She washed the bake oven and the spider, and rinsed the dishcloth. For an instant she was still, listening to the long wailing howl from the dark prairie. They all knew what it was, but that sound always ran cold up Laura's backbone and crinkled over the back of her head. Ma shook the dishcloth, and then she walked into the dark and spread the cloth on the tall grass to dry. When she came back, Pa said, "Wolves. Half a mile away, I judge." "Well, where there's deer, there will be wolves. I wish—" He didn't say what he wished, but Laura knew. He wished Jack was there. When wolves howled in the big woods, Laura had always known that Jack would not let them hurt her. A lump swelled in her throat, and her nose smarted. She winked fast and did not cry. That wolf, or perhaps another wolf, howled again. "Bedtime for little girls," Ma said cheerfully. Mary got up and turned around so that Ma could unbutton her. But Laura jumped up and stood still. She saw something. Deep in the dark, beyond the firelight, two green lights were shining near the ground. They were eyes. Cold ran up Laura's backbone. Her scalp crinkled. Her hair stood up. The green lights moved. One winked out. Then the other winked out. Then both shone steadily, coming nearer. Very rapidly they were coming near. Bum, bum, bum. Now what do you think it is, boys and girls? "Look, Pa, look," Laura said. "A wolf!" Pa did not seem to move quickly, but he did. In an instant he took his gun out of the wagon and was ready to fire at those green eyes. The eyes stopped coming. They were still in the dark, looking at him. It can't be a wolf unless it's a mad wolf," Pa said. Ma lifted Mary into the wagon. "And it's not that," said Pa. "Listen to the horses." Pet and Patty were still biting off bits of grass. And here's a picture of Ma and Laura and Mary sitting watching Pa take his gun toward this wolf. "A lynx or a coyote?" said Ma. Pa picked up a stick of wood. He shouted and threw it. The green eyes went close to the ground, as if the animal crouched to spring. But Pa held the gun ready. The creature did not move. "Don't, Charles," Ma said. But Pa walked slowly toward those eyes, and slowly along the ground the eyes crawled toward him. Laura could see the animal in the edge of the dark. It was a tawny animal and brindled. Then Pa shouted and Laura screamed. And we're going to stop right there, boys and girls, because I'm going to run out of time. I'll make another video here as soon as this one's ready, done loading, and we'll find out what happens with this coyote or lynx or wolf. We don't know what it is. Bum, bum, bum!